No, it's all good. Yeah,
Okay.
it's it'll. I found that even with like really bad connections and stuff, sometimes it'll will Zoom picks out the best
Okay.
versions of both sides, so it's okay. Yeah, don't worry about it. So yeah, we are recording. We are live. So welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast, Charlotte Fisher.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. I'm glad we've managed to make this happen because yeah, and you're busy and I've been busy and we've managed to make it work. And
Yeah,
I know you were busy tonight and you've had a bit of a hectic day walking the dog and work and everything. So it's good that you're okay and you're ready to go.
good.
Awesome, brilliant. Right, so what I normally do is just sort of ask the guest a bit about them, like if they can sort of give their history with running and how they got into running and everything, and go as far back as you need to, as much detail as possible. But before I ask that, I just wanted to just sort of say that um, I came across you. Obviously, you know you won the North Downs Way
Yeah.
100, and so I saw looked and found your name, and I thought, oh, I'll look on Instagram and I'll see if I can find you on there. And I was like, okay, Charlotte Fisher. No, it just looks like there's a travel blogger called called Charlotte Fisher. It doesn't look like an ultra runner, but it is you, isn't
Okay.
it?
There is no running history. That's why it's going to be an interesting question.
Yeah, so yeah, that is the question then. So I know you know you've only been running for 6 months, but sort of give us your background. Have you got a history in sport at all, or is this
No.
literally?
I was literally a few years ago. I was 25 kgs heavier as well, so it's a bit of a weird one. So basically, I uh how I started running officially, I would say this February. That's when I started training for a 106-kilometer ultra around the Isle of Wight. That's where I live. But I had done a 50K the summer previously with zero training and then
Wow.
just never ran again. It was just one of those things. I lost my aunt to cancer and I wanted to try and channel the hospice which looked after her. Um, I wanted to try and raise some money for that. And I had zero running background. I'd run a 10K or maybe even a 20K most. And I'd seen a David Goggins thing, got inspired, and I'd Googled Isle of Wight Ultra. And I'd saw that there was this 50-kilometer ultra coming up in June on the Isle of Wight. And I didn't actually understand that it wasn't an official race or anything. It was a guided ultra with a coach. So who happens to actually be my coach now. So I reached out and I was like, look, I want to do this 50K. And he was like, well, have you got any background? I was like, no, I'm willing to do it because I've seen David Goggins gone out and done it. I thought, you know what, I can do it.
You can do it. Okay.
Um, and he kind of, again, I'm imagining he looked at my Instagram and thought, so he just said, do a 35K with a 6 minute pace and come back to me. Now, at the time, I run this business as well as social media where I look after animals and do dog walking. And I had to try and fit in a 35K in an extremely busy summer because it was the few weeks leading up to it. So this shows how inexperienced I was. I couldn't even comprehend thinking of a route which was long enough to do 35 kilometers. So I set it up on the running machine to a 6 minute pace. And I spent 3.5 hours on the running machine, did it, took a photo, sent it to him, and he was like, "You've just done that on the running machine. By all means, join." So that's what I did. Anyway, cut a long story short, I did that guided ultra, and I'd say that's even up there with the 100 miler. Like that was tough without any training. A really hilly 50K when you literally have no clue about anything. I'd borrowed a camel backpack. I had zero gels. I think I had a couple cereal bars or something. I was so underprepared. And I remember getting to about 25 kilometers in, which was just a half, and thinking, oh my God, can I even continue? But everyone else was experienced runners. They were just doing a nice day out, guided ultra on the Isle of Wight. Meanwhile, I'm raising money for a hospice, don't know what I'm up to, and it was truly brutal. the funny thing was, I'd never even ran a marathon. So when we got to 42 kilometers, the whole group were congratulating me on my first marathon. So that was last June. And then after that, I was shell shocked. I don't think I walked for a week. I was in a very bad way. And I was like, wow, ultra, completed it, done.
One
I'm
and
an
done.
ultra runner now. And then I just went back to my usual kind of fitness routine. I mean, I go to the gym and, I'm a dog walker.
Mm.
And then I was in Thailand in January, and it was when the spine race was on. So I'd followed the guy who took the guided ultra, and I saw he was in the spine race. And over dinner, I was with a few photographers and influencers, and I was speaking about the spine race. And one of the guys there, he was like, "Oh, I know Matt Buck. Oh yeah, I've done an ultra," and I was like, "Oh, me too." I was really proud. I was like, "I've done 50K," and the guy was like, "Oh, I've done 100K," and then I was like, "Right, what?" I was like, 100K. I didn't even know that was a thing. Obviously, I saw Matt doing the spine race, but I knew that was like something a bit different. So then I was like, back to Google, Isle of Wight Ultra, and I saw there was one around the whole island, 12 weeks away, 106 kilometers. And I was like, well, if the guy at dinner can do it, I can do it. So then that was it. I approached Matt again, and I was like, look, I want to do 100 kilometers this time. I've only got 12 weeks. What do you think? And he just said, well, you managed to do that 50K with zero training. So with the right training, why not? And then after that, that was pretty much my life. It was 10 weeks of training and 2 weeks deload. And obviously I had, no, so 2 weeks taper. And then I did have a little deload in there at some point. I had a really bad ankle injury as well. It was just chaos. And I put my heart and soul into the training, but I didn't expect the result that came out of it. So I never even had Strava. I got Strava as I got the coach. So February this year, just so he could see, my training. So a few people followed it. And when I got my ankle injury, I went to an injury clinic, and Ben, the guy in there, he was like, I've been looking at your training and it's on par with a lot of the best men on the Isle of Wight. You're likely to win. And I was like, what? So I messaged Matt and I was like, my physio says that I might be likely to win. And Matt goes, well, I don't want to put that extra pressure on you for your first ultra, but yeah, your training's gone really well. You should place quite high. And I was like, whoa. But I didn't want to get ahead of myself. My goal was just to complete it because I had nightmares about this 106 kilometers. I couldn't even comprehend it. It's around the whole Isle of Wight that I live on. So I just, yeah. So after that, I had my pacing plan, and it was for 13 and a half hours. And when I'd first signed up for this, my goal was 20 hours. I'd had so many people at my gym say, oh, I've tried that so many times, I can't finish it. Oh, it takes me about 20 hours. So I kind of accepted it was going to be really tough. My goal was to get it under 20 hours. Anyway, this pacing plan came in 13 and a half. I was shocked. I was like, do you really think this is possible? I was so chuffed if it was. So anyway, I set off, and it was like, I think it started a 6.5 minute kilometer pace. And I felt completely out of my depth at the start because I'd never done a competitive race before. I'd never done anything like it before. So everyone looked really professional. I was there with my red lipstick, like just completely with my charity t-shirt on, completely out of my depth. And I let everyone push me to the back of the group because I just didn't know what I was up to. Anyway, I set off, and I was a bit slower than my pacing plan just because the first part of the Isle of Wight Ultra is quite a lot of narrow paths and you can't actually go that fast. And then just something hit me, and I saw the people ahead, and I was like, oh my God, I really want to win. And I'm so far back, what am I going to do? But I stuck to my pacing plan for the first, yeah, I'd say I went more to a 6 minute pace. But I managed to about, I think you can see at the first checkpoint, I think I'm like 120th or something. But by the time I got 40K in, I'd gone right up the ranks, probably to about 30th, because everyone was kind of dropping back. And the people that pushed me out the way in the beginning were destroyed. And I was just chilling. Yeah, it was a great feeling. And then I got to the halfway point, and I was second female. And I'd seen the first lady, because you kind of have to go up a road, and we crossed as she was coming down. She'd gone into checkpoint and she was coming down. She looked me in the eyes, and I sensed fear. And at that point, I was like, right, I'm going to get her. So she was about half an hour ahead of me, but I had 50 kilometers to get her. And I got her, I think it was about 80 kilometers in, and then that was it. So I ended up winning that race, which was just, no, everyone was just hoping that I'd complete it. No one actually thought that I would win. So I thought my running career was going to be over after that. I was like, right, completed it, I'm done. But once I did so well, everyone was like, what's next?
Mm.
And whilst I was training, all of these suggested videos kept coming up on TikTok. There's a guy called Andy Glaze, and I was obsessed with his videos, and he always does 100-mile ultras.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, well, it has to be 100 miles, just has to be. So I looked at the race schedule for the rest of the year and spoke to Matt, and he was like, ordinarily, I wouldn't say yes to training for 100 so soon, but he was like, I mean, if you're going to put the work in, you might be able to do it. So originally, Thames Path was the week after, so obviously that was like a no-go. Then the South Down, that was just a month after, so that was too soon. There was North Down Way, which I was told was very difficult and
Mm.
usually a heat wave, and was August, so still quite early on to my training, or Autumn 100, which gave me plenty of time. But I didn't like the idea of that because I thought it would be bad weather.
Mm.
How did that end up for the race I actually had? Bad
Yeah.
weather and less daylight. So I just said to Matt, I just said, do you know what? I'm going to train hard and go for North Down Way. I was like, even if it's hard, do you know what? I'm just going to put some extra hill sessions in. I did a lot of Stairmaster to train for it. And, I was expecting to get a nice tan. I bought loads of equipment for like cooling things to put around my neck
Yeah,
for like heat
yeah.
waves, everything. I was so prepared. I did all my training, hottest days, middle of the day. I was ready
Mm.
for this heat wave 100 miler. And then, yeah, it was rain start to finish. So just one of those things. So that's my kind of background. It is a weird story. And
No.
if you look at any of the other people's Instagram pages, it's all dedicated to running. And then there's just one post from April when I won that race, and then now one for this race. But
Yeah.
I do have a TikTok which looks very much like running. That all my TikTok is just to do with running. I'm a bit behind with it, but yeah.
Amazing. So you've had an absolute whirlwind, then, haven't you? For
Yeah,
like
yeah.
ultra
0 to
running.
100, literally 100 miles.
Yeah. And so it's interesting that so you live on the Isle of Wight then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whereabouts do you live on the island then? So before we were rudely interrupted by the internet, you were just saying about where so you're on the Isle of Wight, aren't you? Based there?
Yeah, so I'm based in the centre of it, but I do pet sitting, so it kind of leads me to anywhere.
Mm.
Well, central to kind of west south of the island, I typically stay. But there's really great coastal trails, and that's what I've been making sure that a lot of my runs have a lot of elevation and just kind of practicing as much as I can for the hills.
Mm. Yeah. So I know that course well because I've done the Isle of Wight challenge twice.
Oh, you've done it.
Yeah, it was one of the. So my brother, my oldest brother, lives in Poole.
I,
So I spent a lot of time just on the south coast around Dorset and everything. And I knew when I first got into it, ultra running, so probably over like 10, 11, 12, 11, how many years ago? 11 years ago, something like that. So I'm trying to remember the year. I can't remember the year that I did it, but I did it 2 consecutive years.
I think it's been going for long, has it? I think maybe since.
Yeah, I can't remember. So it wasn't. It was early on in my ultra running career, but it wasn't by any means any of the first. Like the first ultras that I did. But yeah, he's got holds a special place in my heart because I had like the worst blisters I've ever had, previous to the worst blisters that I've just had in a race.
Had you gone through a muddy section at the forest at Boldner?
Yeah, and what got me was is there still a bit where you have to go on a bit of the beach? Is there still a bit? Because when I did it, it was only 1 year because it alters which way it goes, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
clockwise, anti-clockwise. So one of the years I did
Yeah,
it.
it's Boldner Beach. You would have gone
Yeah.
through Parkhurst Forest and then Boldner Beach, and I walk dogs there, And I knew it was extremely flooded and very muddy the whole winter. And I kept sending photos to my coach saying, it's getting worse. And he said, don't worry, a bit of sun, it'll dry out. But we had a really wet April and it got worse. And I'd spoken to other people who also said by the time they get to the Allen Bay, the Needles, their feet were in bits. So I actually had waterproof socks and a change of shoes just for that section because I knew it was going to be bad. And this year, actually, someone broke their leg in there. It was that muddy. So I can fully relate. That bit sent nightmares for me for weeks. Kept checking it and sending photos and being like, it's getting wetter, muddier.
No, not good. So what got me was that I got a blister from I did broke the one of the golden rules of ultra running, which was to run in new shoes. So I got some new Hokas, and I'd only got them like the week before the race, and I loved them so much. I was like, right, I know I haven't really broke them in. I've ran in them once, but they'll be fine for the race. I'm sure. It'll be fine. And that was back in the days when Hokas were quite narrow. And I got a blister on the side of my big toe, and I not realised that I'd got this blister, and I was putting like Vaseline on it and stuff, stopping to check it. But I'd not realised that when I'd like stopped to take my sock off and check it and stuff, I'd managed to get sand into the blister. So this blister had got sand inside it, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger because the sand just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. So it ended up being like the most horrific blister, and I swore that I'd never have Hokas again, and I have worn Hokas since. It's not Hoka's fault. It was my fault for having narrow shoes.
I did for my second half a brand new pair of Hokas as well, but you know it worked out well. And now they're my just go-to shoes. They had arrived the day before, and I'd worn them for a walk, and I was like,
Yeah.
I had them for my change of shoe, and I'd worn other variations, so I was like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Right. So is there still the bit where you have to go on the chain ferry and everything? That little
changed that. Now there's a diversion, so you go down and then along, which I think is much better because that chain ferry is never running. That's probably why they had to do it.
It was running when I did it those 2 years, but it just felt a bit like weird. It just a bit like odd, like you've like ran through the dark and then suddenly you get to this chain ferry and you have to sit and wait for it, and then you sat there.
There was a multi-million-pound scheme into building this new one, and it's just had nothing but issues. So honestly, I think that's probably one of the reasons it is just never running. It's had so many issues.
Fair enough. Right, I've just lost my questions. Where have they gone? There we are. So tell me about so obviously when I saw your Instagram page and saw you are well traveled. So is this what you do for your job then? Do you like
social media since I moved off the Isle of Wight to live in London to go to university, and it was before influencers or anything like that was a thing. And I actually, funny enough, hated my photo being taken, hated it. But I lived with this Russian girl, and she was a photographer, and she started taking these really nice candid photos of me. And I've always dressed quite out there, but I just never liked the photos that were taken of me. But she started taking these really nice photos, and I went to university at King's College, and at the time Somerset House backs onto it, and that's where they had London Fashion Week. And I was just off to a geography lecture, wearing one of my outfits, and I've walked through there and all these photographers are stopping, taking my photo, and I'm just trying to get to my lecture, and they're like, what's your blog, and I was like, oh, what? And I had no idea. I was just literally just a geography student. And then afterwards I got home and I researched bloggers, and I was like, oh, do you know what, that looks a bit fun, I'll do that. So I started, my Russian flatmate took photos of me that I liked, and I started posting them on my blog and my Instagram. And it was before people were getting paid for stuff, so it just organically blew up quite quickly. There's no algorithms back then or anything like that, and I just kind of rode that wave for quite a while. And then I moved away from the fashion side of it because I don't really support fast fashion. That was a lot of like my work in the beginning, and then obviously tried to move over to things that align better with me. And I love to travel, and it just made sense to kind of sort of rebrand over the years towards that. I've always had a strong interest in promoting like mental wellness, mental health, fitness as well. That's why the running content, I was worried it would kind of be a bit out there for people, but it's really resonated with a lot of people. I've done a poll saying like, do you want to see it? And I think 3 people said no, and then all the rest said yes. Like there was tons, people are interested because they like to see someone who is relatable do something like that, because it shows that it's attainable.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, to think that you wouldn't have called yourself a runner or particularly an ultra
And,
runner.
the North Down Way is a prestigious race.
Yeah,
I'm still shocked. I didn't go into that one thinking that I'd win. Obviously, I wanted to, but I'd read the race preview and seen the favourites to win. And on paper, do you know what? They are way more experienced and better runners than me. I hadn't recce'd any of the route. I don't know where I was. It was chaos, but I don't know.
do you think it's down to, obviously you would have talked with Matt, your coach, about this. Is this all based on sort of a genetic ability that you think you've
Yeah,
got?
I think it seems to be natural ability, because I do remember at school, I did like maybe in year eight, how old are you? 11, 12. I did a cross country and I came third. Two boys beat me, but I remember I was first girl by quite a while and beat a lot of the boys. And then I'd do in the sports day, I'd do the 600 meters, like the longer distance stuff, and I'd always win. But it was nothing, wasn't something that I ever carried on. My mum didn't drive, so I'd been invited to the athletics teams and stuff, but I couldn't get there. And I guess it's just always been there. I just didn't know. I don't know, because it just does seem weird to everyone, even me. To have progressed and.
I think that just shows. I suppose if you'd like taken a different turn when you were younger, you probably you could have been like an Olympian by now if you'd had the opportunity.
Oh God, could
Like
you?
slide
I
indoors.
watched the Usain Bolt documentary just before the race, and I was so inspired. And I did get down a bit. I was like, oh, do you know what? I've wasted my time, and I could have been way better. But with ultra running, it is something that they do say is better started later in life. So Courtney Dauwalter, her first race, I think she was 28, so similar age to me. So in a way, sometimes maybe everything else has been character building, and I did a lot of strength building and stuff before. So maybe all of that has kind of been the foundations to why a lot of it is mental strength, isn't it? So I probably wouldn't have had the mental strength back then, whereas now I'm a bit more focused, and
Got that
you
bit
don't have as much time in your early 20s to be doing this. I've had to change my life, dedicate it to this training. I was too busy at the club, or I wasn't running at the weekend, put it that way.
Yeah. It's it's amazing, really. That I think you're right. Actually, there's plenty of like outstanding ultra runners that got into ultra running like in later years. So like Dean Karnazes, like who's credited with like being like the starting the modern wave of ultra running. He was 30 when he decided to go through his first ultra, and he had a massive career.
Was he the guy that ran home after a night out? Is he American? Yeah. I've seen that interview and I was like, that's relatable. Like, I always used to. I have a friend called Eliza, and I always used to get us to run places because I'd be like, come on, it's quicker. Just like,
So you've probably always been an ultra runner. You just didn't
know it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you've got so much potential there. The fact that you've got that natural ability, plus now if if it's something that you want to continue doing, then if you put the training in now, there's the sky's the limit, basically.
That's what I'm hoping. I was almost, do you know what? The week before the North Down Way, I almost pulled out a bit because I wanted a good result, and I'd checked the race report and seen the predictions, and I just thought, I didn't feel good enough, and I knew my training's been rushed compared to other people. That last training block, I mean, it felt like I blinked and it was over, because it was straight off the back of the other one, and I'd had to have recovered from the other one first. And Matt did say it was a push to train for 100 miles so soon after, and I almost didn't do it because I just thought I'd rather give it my all. Then I just thought, no, because I've done the training, so I may as well just eat my pride and just see how it goes. The problem was, it's winning your first race. It sets the bar quite high. And it's just people that don't understand the races. Like the Isle of Wight Ultra is a charity event where novices, anyone can do it. Whereas I was trying to explain to people the Centurion events, that you have to qualify to do this race. These people are, by all means, some of them are professionals. And everyone was saying to me, "Oh, are you going to win this one?" And I was like, I would love to, but I don't think so. And it kind of put a lot of pressure on me, and it almost got into my head that race report in particular, not race report, the race prediction. Um, I looked at all those females and they're amazing, and I was like, wow, I'm going to be running up against people like this. But saying that, but the lady that I beat on the Isle of Wight Ultra, I think she did the I forgot what the event is. It's in Jordan, the Ultra X
Oh
maybe.
yeah, Ultra X Jordan,
She
yeah.
came second. So I mean, she by all means she was good, but I don't know. I didn't know about any of the other people running the Isle of Wight Ultra, and she was hard to catch. Like she was really hard to catch. So I just knew that it was going to be loads of hers at this North Downs Way in a place that I don't know. And I checked the weather forecast, and it was getting progressively worse. And I was like, should I even do this race? And I got in my own head, but anyway, worked out in the end. I did do it, obviously.
I think all credit to you, obviously, but also to Matt, your coach, for taking that chance, because I coach people as well, and I think he must have obviously saw that spark in you and thought, I've got to let her do this race,
Yeah,
because if he saw that potential in you, then that's a great quality in a coach, to be able to see potential and
yeah,
to think, because on paper you shouldn't have been training for 100 miler after you've done, I mean, but then you've got people that do this. They come into ultra running and they just get hooked instantly. And the traditional approach would be to build yourself up in distance over a few years so that your body can get used to it. But there's plenty of people that just come crashing into the sport and just do everything all at once, and it
yeah,
works out. So do you,
yeah.
do you do you worry about sort of that it might have been too much too soon, or you just how's your recovery from the race gone? Do you feel like you took it in your
My
stride?
recovery was good because I took the second half really easy because I knew I already had a half an hour lead.
Mm,
So I had my partner feed texting me information, and I only went as far. I knew I was, it was 80 miles in is when my body really felt it. And I had at least a half an hour buffer. So I just kind of went as fast as I needed to. I didn't push those last 20 miles because I didn't have to. But had there been another
mm,
person closer, then probably my body would be in a lot worse position right now because I would have gone faster those last 20. Um, for the 106 on the Isle of Wight, my recovery was a lot worse, but I think that's because it's the first time my body's been through something like that. And where I finished at 7 p.m., I tried to go straight to bed that night, and obviously that doesn't work out. So I was really confused because I thought I was going to be tired, and I really struggled that night mentally as well because I couldn't shut down. Whereas with this one, I finished 5 in the morning. So by the time I got back to the Isle of Wight, I just naturally kind of calmed down, slept really well in comparison to, that my recovery was brutal after 106 kilometer. I thought I thought I needed the ambulance. I thought, I'd done irreversible damage because I had run that one really fast to catch the second half. I went off plan just to catch that woman. So I was running like 5 minute kilometers quite for most of that for the second half to catch her. And I'd never put my body through something like that before, so I didn't know what to expect. And I really was concerned because I was wide awake. I'd taken tailwind way too late into the race as well. Whereas on the 100 miler, I stopped and like really stopped all my caffeine and everything. So towards the end of the race, I knew that it would be very unlikely anyone could catch me. And if they were speeding up, I knew that I could, drop the hammer a bit and go a bit faster. But I just tried to, with everything, I slowed down my tailwinds, just anything like that. Just to go, yeah, I'm really shocked actually how good my recovery's been. Everyone's shocked how my recovery's been for this 100 miler, but I think it's because those last 20 miles I didn't
yeah.
push. Yeah, they were hard, but I didn't push
No.
but there is a funny story about that though, because my pacer for the last 20 miles was my partner's dad. And towards the end, I'm obviously not thinking straight. I've had my hallucinations, I'm losing the plot, but I've read a text and I thought, and I know I'm losing the plot because I knew that they were so far behind, and that far into the race, a mile takes people ages. But I'd thought I'd read a text saying that someone was catching me up. So after being broken, can barely shuffle, I've sprinted off, and Charlie's dad's kind of had to be like, Charlie, what did you say to her? You spooked her, she's gone. So it just shows I had it in me, like there was fight in me if I
Yeah,
had to.
you needed it.
But the fact that I didn't push it, I think saved my body, because I was sore, but not as sore as I had been for the 106 kilometer. So
I think that's always the case, and if you can back off, I know, you know, as your ultra running career progresses and you start doing like multi-day races,
yeah,
that's something that I found has come in, and obviously Matt, your coach, will talk to you about that. That if you've, you know, if you've got a decent lead on a multi-day race, you don't destroy yourself
no,
to get it, because there's no need. You just
that's what happened on this race. People said to me, they were tracking me, they're like, you slow down. I was like, because I didn't have, like, I had to keep fast, because I didn't want them to see that there was two females who were about 3 miles behind me for quite a while. And actually one of them DNF'd and the other one ended up being fifth. So they obviously burnt themselves out. But they were on my tail for ages. And at that point, I didn't ever want to slow down, because I didn't want them to see a weakness and think they could catch me. But then one of them spent way too long at the 50-mile half point, so you know that they're broken if they're in there for that long. And then the other one was driving me mad, but then she DNF'd. So once those two were kind of out of the agenda for me, I knew it was going to take a very special runner to really bridge that gap. She did make good distance, the person that came second, but there was just no way really. As long as I was moving forwards, there was no way really. But I was ready to, you know, run if I had to. But I didn't. I could tell my body was hurting. There was no point me pushing it. But originally I was going for 20 hours. That was my pacing plan. But just in those conditions, and I just thought there's no point pushing it. I was so pleased that I was in the lead, and I just thought, for the sake of my body, I'll just keep moving, but yeah, not push it.
Yes, that's, you know, that shows is that something that you talked to Matt, your coach, about doing, or is it just
No,
something?
and and my pacing plan was not it was not to go out the way that I did, but I saw everything changed in the morning because of the weather. And I just thought to myself, my plan changed. I went completely off my pacing plan, and I actually got PBs in. I think on my Strava it says like your 5K PB, your 20K PB, 30K, up to 50K PBs, because I just decided go out as fast. I'd been tapering, so my body was, I was like a caged lion. So my risk was, I realised everyone was going to be suffering because of the weather, sore feet, like low morale. And I just thought, if I can make as much time in the beginning, because I know I can sustain quite a fast pace for, in my training plans, like a marathon, I could do a fast marathon. I just figured if I could just push it as far as I could for as long as I could, and then I could just drop back and try and manage it. So that was my plan. But no, we hadn't discussed that at all. No, I
It's
just
good that that you can think that way, because obviously you've got a competitive nature about you. Is that
yeah.
something that you didn't know that you had until you started doing ultras, or has that always been something you've known you've been competitive?
I am quite. I don't tend to do anything which involves being competitive, but it is definitely in me. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's good that you know, you're relatively inexperienced at racing, but you know, the things that you've talked about there, that's like the kind of thing that it takes years to sort of get in your head.
That's what Matt said. He did actually text me afterwards when I explained it, and he said that's a technique that's called something. But I just literally saw the weather forecast for the day, and I thought I'll do as much speed as I can now, because I knew that the second half was loads of walking elevation anyway. So I was just like, if I can get out there as fast as I could. And the good thing was that I was with the like speedy men, and I was with these two men, and shout out to Alan and Matt. They were ex-GB 100K road runners, so I knew by staying with them I was going at great pace. Like, so there was obviously no females to chat to or whatever, so I was just staying with men, and I would be saying to them like, what's your plan, like when do you want to finish this thing? Because if they were like 17 hours, I'd be like, well, I need to slow down. But they were like, we want under 24, 20, between 20 and 24. And I was like, okay, perfect, because that was my main goal was under 24 hours. I wanted that buckle, which is funny because if you see my race, you know, at the end when you hold the trophy, I'm actually holding my buckle as well because I was so happy to get that. Whereas the winner, the male's winner, is just holding his trophy. He obviously doesn't care about his little buckle, but I was so really praying for that buckle. I was desperate to get it under 24 hours. So I'm actually holding my buckle and my trophy because I was so proud of both of them. But yeah, so I spoke to basically anyone that was running by the side of. I asked them roughly what time they wanted to finish in, and they were all kind of around the same time that I wanted to. So I was like, okay, it's a good speed. A lot of them had done, the two runners that I mentioned, they had never done 100 miles before. Obviously, they've done loads of 100 kilometers. 20 years ago, they were on the GB team. But there's other ultra runners. Like there was a guy he'd done the North Downs Way 6 times, and he said he always finished around 22 hours. So to be running like alongside him, actually he was really valuable because he was called James. He'd done 160 100-milers since 2015.
Wow.
Crazy. He does one sometimes. He'd done one the weekend before. He doesn't train. He runs a mile a day, but he does his 100-milers. But he knew the course at the back of his hand, so he was really valuable just to chat to, and really nice guy. So yeah, I kind of gauged everyone's speeds because, like I say, if I was running with someone who was like, yeah, I want to finish in 17 hours, I'd be like, well, I'm going to burn out 100%. Whereas these other people, it was like attainable for me to keep going like the speed that I was going.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's a great. I mean, it's, with ultras, you make friends like really easily, don't you? Like by the time you've finished a race with somebody that you've been running with for sort of 4 or 5 hours, you like you know all about them, don't you? You know what the kid's called, you know what the dog's called.
Literally, yeah. I've got my Strava because I've, like I said, I've never had Strava before, and I made a really good friend. He was from the on the Isle of Wight Ultra. He was from the start time half an hour before, and he was the first person that had. So in the second half, I was one of the faster lots because I was catching up with that woman, and I was running with this guy just for a bit of company, but he was kind of going a bit slow. And all of a sudden, this guy comes from behind, speeding, and I said to him, "Are you from the start time before?" And he was like, "Yeah," because he was going too fast to have been with this lot. Because where would he have got that energy from? And I made the decision at that point. I stayed with the slower guy, and then I was like, "Do you know what? I've got to go. See you later." And I ran and I caught this guy up. He's called Anthony. And I think I ran 35 kilometers to the end of him because he actually got a bit tired, whereas I'd been slow the first half. So I kept him going, but he actually came third because he was from the other start time. But yeah, we set the worlds to right. It was just us two taking on the Isle of Wight. And, you know, there's other people from the Isle of Wight Ultra, and they've supported this new 100-miler and just through Strava. And I'd never had Strava before. So it's really nice to have people that actually care about exercise on there. Because, you know, you share Facebook and it's just like people are like, oh, she's talking about running again. Whereas they actually care on Strava. That's the good thing.
Yeah, that's I always laugh because my oldest brother who lives in Poole, he's never really been into social media, but he got into Strava in a really big way, and Strava is like his social media. Like if you go, because he's a road cyclist, but any workout he puts on there, there's like 30 or 40 comments on there, like with these, like, and he's like friends with like thousands of people, and like it's too much for me. I can't.
He didn't have Facebook or anything, but he had Strava. So I was like, actually, we have to keep in contact. Like we've been best friends this whole end of the run. Like, and yeah, so he didn't have it, but he had Strava, and there's quite a few people like that, and it's positive. It's a positive social media, but it drives me mad. When I was on my taper, I couldn't even go on it. I was so triggered seeing people doing their runs. I'm just there doing nothing. Like, oh my god.
It's worse when you're injured and you have to see people.
Oh yeah, you have to go on it. Even now, just in my recovery, it's I think I put one up. I did a 5K on Saturday, and I was like, a week ago today, I said I was never running again, and now I wish I was running further.
We all say that at the end of a race. I'm never doing that again. But then,
I was with my pacer, and there was me and a few men. We were going up one of the many hills, and we're saying, I don't know why we're doing this. This is pathetic. This isn't fun. Why would we do this? And then she's just been really peppy and like happy about, because she's just the pace been there for a little bit, and we're just all saying after this, never again.
It's called type 2 fun, isn't it?
Type two, yeah. Very solid type two. Because now I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a brilliant day. But I literally remember saying to myself, do not do this again. This is not good. This is hard. You're crying. I was crying at one point. I cried.
Yeah, it's not a good ultra unless you've had a good cry and decided that you're gonna run in, and then
Yeah,
amazingly, the day after you're looking at races, aren't you, to sign
yeah,
up again?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the point then, isn't it? So we've established that you have natural genetic ability. You've got a competitive streak.
Maybe I'm just stubborn and competitive. I don't know.
You've got a competitive stubborn streak,
Yeah,
and you've got good recovery. So
yeah.
you basically, the sky's the limit as far as ultra running for you. So have you thought kind of like blue sky thinking of like what big races, and do you even, you've not been in the sport very long, do you even
Yeah,
know
I'm so
what
new
races?
to everything. Like the name's Courtney DeWalter has literally been on my radar like 2 months. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very new. Tom Evans followed me on Instagram yesterday though. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm making moves in the community. But basically everything I saw originally was through David Goggins. So Badwater is obviously up there.
Yeah.
And I think North Downs Way was a qualifier for it. But obviously, I think that would be very costly.
You like the heat as well, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done the training for some hot running, so yeah, and that's 120, so it's not that much further, but obviously the conditions are brutal. But I quite like the idea of torture in that sense, because originally, before I knew about many races, I was like, oh, marathon sables, things like that. But actually, that doesn't seem to me as difficult as something like Badwater would be. That's more like a multi-day thing, and people walk it. That's definitely, I think, a bit of a flex of wealth more than anything, like that sort of race. Still, by
Yes.
all means,
Yeah.
impressive. But the ones that I'm kind of looking at, yeah, I like the idea. Badwater looks a bit of me because, yeah, it looks a bit tough. I've been speaking to a few people who've been saying that I need to look into the ones in the Canary Islands.
Yes.
There's a
Yeah.
few good ones there.
But
Yeah,
what about like UK, like long distance? Because you don't know how good you are at really long distance stuff. So
yeah.
you've got the spine race that Matt. I was with Matt actually when he just before he pulled out of the spine race. Because I was on media for the spine race this year in January. So I was.
The dog's eating a bone. So I'm just I can hear she was just trying to get my attention. Now she's gone over to a bone. So I just hope it's not interfering with the audio.
So just to clarify, it's the dog that is eating the bone. And if you listen to the audio version, it's the dog eating the bone. It's not Charlotte eating the
I'm a
bone.
vegan.
What was I saying? Yeah, so I was on the media team for the spine race this year. So I was at one of the checkpoints filming,
Uh,
and Matt was there, and he was feeling very sorry for himself. And I think that's just after that. So
yeah,
I,
I think
I've
that
not.
was the first DNF ever.
Yeah, I
Which is
felt.
hard.
It is. Yeah, it's
But
an
for
app.
safety reasons, wasn't it? He was willing to go on, but I just don't think safety reasons
The
permitted it.
medics, the
Too cold
medics,
to go that
yeah,
fast. Yeah,
yeah. The medics will, if they see that there's a real issue there, they won't, because it's too dangerous to let somebody carry on if they're going to get out of a checkpoint and think they're going to be okay.
yeah,
You're up in like the Cheviots or something where there's no access up there and stuff, and there's
yeah.
snow everywhere. You cause a problem for other people by carrying on. So he did the right thing by stopping, and that's reminded me actually. I need to get in touch with him, and because when I saw him, I said I'd get him on the podcast and we'd talk about having to DNF a race. So I still haven't done that, so I'll get hold of him again and we'll have a chat.
Yeah.
So what does the future hold then? So in the immediate future, then what have you got your eye on a race like towards the end of this year, or you
So
think?
I spoke to because Hoka reached out actually. They're sending me a pair of shoes. Hang on, I don't know if to let the sorry about this. The dog wants to go outside, but once she's out, when it's dark, she starts barking. Um,
We
shall I?
can we can wrap things up if you want to wrap it up.
No, it's fine. I'll just. She's just. She's just
Beautiful dog. Yeah, I saw the
German
picture.
Shepherd
The
with
picture. Yeah.
a lot of energy. She wants to go outside, but then I know she starts barking.
Yeah.
No, no. So I was playing. Don't work with kids or animals. But it's because I'm not giving her attention. So yeah. What was I saying? Yeah, so I was speaking to the Hoka guy, and he was just going out to the Alps for UTMB. Obviously, that would be like the huge goal. But the problem is, Isle of Wight doesn't have a mountain to practice on, so I'd have to do travel for mountain training and stuff. There's a lot of elevation here, thankfully, due to big
the
cliffs.
Needles. Yeah.
That's where I did my hill training actually for North Downs Way. I would park up in freshwater and run up and down Tennyson. I looked absolutely crazy. But you know, it was really good way of getting elevation in a quick session. But yeah, I want to do some mountain training, I think, because I love the idea, obviously, of combining travel with the ultra running now. I'm not the type of girl that's gonna do a 100-mile track. Like, that's not me. That I do it to enjoy. The Isle of Wight one was amazing because it was going around my island. Sorry, the dog is just.
Don't worry about the dog. It's fine.
She sounds vicious, but she's just, it gets this time. She's just. But I'm gonna put her outside 1 second and I'll just deal with the bug.
I'll just talk to myself for a couple of seconds. I'll have a look at my questions.
Okay. Sorry, I did. I did wonder if this was going to be an issue, but I thought walking her before she was going to be tired. But she's a 2-year-old German Shepherd with a lot of energy.
Yeah, beautiful dog. I saw the picture earlier. I grew up with dogs. I had a husky for a long time. Yeah, we're still, the girls. I've got two. I say two teenage girls. The one's 13 and one's 11, and they're at the point now. They've been asking for a dog for a few years, but it was only a few years ago that my husky died, and that absolutely broke my heart. So I swore I'd never have a dog again, but now they're kind of convincing us to. My youngest is obsessed with Australian Shepherd. Is it Aussie sheepdogs? Is it? So
Yeah.
they're like the grey, like bluey ones with the eyes and stuff. And I think we'll probably end up getting one of them.
For running.
Yeah, good for running as well. I mean, the husky, she was great. I had her when I was like first started ultra running, and she used to come on like long runs with me, and I'd get back and just like be absolutely like zonked. And I'd get up off the sofa and she'd be there ready to go again. Like, are we going again? Are we going again? I'm like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah, I went to Lapland, and being like vegan and into like animal rights and stuff, I was thinking, you know, is this husky ride, like, is it exploiting the dogs? And I saw the dogs and how happy they are and how much they actually love it and they want to do it. And I was like, no, this is not exploitation of the dogs. Like, they're begging to do it and they're so excited and they love it. They just love to run with the sleds.
They need to be worked, don't they?
Yeah.
To have that output.
Yeah,
definitely. So one of the things that we didn't talk about that we just touched on was so the relationship with you, was it your auntie that with cancer? So she was the reason why you got into running, or
yeah, she was the catalyst, because before her brother is my dad, but he never really had anything to do with me, so she kind of stepped up and was there for me. My dad has a drinking problem, so she didn't really like the fact that I was drinking so heavily in my 20s. So a big thing was when obviously, to deal with her being ill, I did drink to excess, and then after that I went sober after her funeral, and that's when I decided I could do this run to raise some money for the hospice which looked after her. There's something called Walk the White here, and it's a 26-mile walk. But she said to me on her deathbed, she was like, you need to do something for this hospice, and not just that bloody Walk the White, something better. So that's why I was like, oh, I have to do something. So that's when I saw that 50k, I was like, right, I'll do that, because, you know, 50k for someone that doesn't run is by all means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So have you is this something that you've carried on doing charity work, or
Yeah, so for the Isle of Wight Ultra, I think I raised over £2,000 for bowel cancer, and the main thing for that was I wanted to raise awareness for early diagnosis and for people, because my aunt went to the doctors multiple times over like a 3-year period, and they Flo, sorry, just have to pause it a second. I'm gonna put her out. Come on, out.
we'll have another intermission, doggy intermission.
She's so jealous. She wants to play. Right, she's run away from me, but
just let her do what she's got to do.
as long as you can't just hear her, she's.
No, it's fine.
Oh.
Yeah. What I think you're gonna have to give her the attention that she's craving.
She's had tons of attention. Right, I'm gonna put right, she's outdoors.
She's gone.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So what was I saying? So that I tried to raise a lot of awareness for early detection and like advocate yourself for the warning signs. Because I do feel like my aunt was let down by her GP because they even turned her away, said it was the menopause, anxiety, and had they just done the test when she originally went, obviously things could have been different. So yeah, that was kind of, I wanted to raise awareness on the first one was to raise money for the hospice that looked after her, and the second one was kind of, I posted it more on my social media to a greater audience, the second one, to try and raise more awareness, for advocating for your own health, really.
Yeah, and it seems to be it's on the rise, isn't it? We were, I lost a friend this week actually. Last week, this time last week, a friend, she'd had breast cancer and fought it, brilliantly, and we all thought that was, she was done with it like 3 years ago, and then just suddenly she'd got a pain in the side and she got back to the doctors, and then basically she was, riddled with it again, and it was, too late, so she went downhill very quickly. My brother in Canada, he's got esophageal cancer. He's been, struggling with that for the last year or so, over 18 months. And then a girl that I work with, she's a few months ago got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it just seems like it's all around us. And
I turned up to a client's house the other day, and it's crazy. I hadn't been around there in a month, and she hadn't replied to my messages. So there's some things that I had to sort out. So I sent her a message, said, "Oh, just to let you know, I'll pop round late this afternoon." I turned up and everyone's a bit sheepish. I said, "Can I speak to Sue?" And I think it's her niece. She goes, "Charlotte, she died yesterday." And this is a woman in her 50s, and it all come on within the last 2 weeks. She just started having strokes, went to hospital, and she was end of life cancer, but obviously she had no idea. So that was a huge shock and just, awful. But, had maybe she'd known more of the signs, just, it's terrible.
So this is what you're sort of advocating for then, so people sort of early diagnosis and
because people are embarrassed to talk about the symptoms of bowel cancer and things like that, but I just made sure everyone, for the 106 kilometer, I really pushed this a lot because everyone, they were shocked that I did this 100-mile race, because they were like, we didn't really hear much about it compared to your last race. But it's because I was really heavily raising money for charity for that one. And also with the second one, like I said, I wasn't 100% sure whether I had it in me and that I was going to do it. So I didn't post too much. Obviously, I did on Strava, and I said I was nervous on Strava and stuff, but I hadn't posted on my social media or on my Facebook pages as much as I had for the other one. Because the other one, my Facebook obviously has people from the Isle of Wight, so people resonated a lot with me going around the whole island. And so I definitely did post a lot more. And I was just worried. I didn't raise money for the 100-miler just because, it's more of a competitive entry race, and I'd already raised quite a lot of money only a few months before, and it's cost of living crisis.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
only so many times in there that you
for
can
money.
ask people.
Yeah, so I just did this one more for myself, because I'd already asked people for money not that long ago, April, and people were really generous, and yeah, so I wasn't as vocal about this one. um and I was just worried that people would be annoyed about me posting about running all the time, but I guess people now, I'm going to be speaking about it more because it has, my audience does seem to like me talking about it. So
Yeah, people, especially with your story of sort of coming from a little bit of obscurity to sort of crushing into the scene and making
yeah,
waves.
yeah.
It's a great story for people to follow. So it's not like,
I feel like as well, I feel ultra running in general, the crowd is usually quite privileged background as well. And I come from a council estate,
yeah,
very much don't have the generic story for any of the ultra running background. So
middle-aged. It's a middle-aged white man's sport, isn't it? The ultra running.
yeah,
And
very
I am a middle-aged white man, but I'm not a privileged
big story
middle-aged.
energy. Yeah.
Um, so what I'll do then is if you've got all those charity details, I'll put those in the show notes of the with the audio version and on the YouTube version, everything. So if is there and where do you want people to sort of be directed to sort of follow your journey? Is it your TikTok, your Instagram, or your
I would say
Facebook?
my Instagram, because I do then repost the TikToks onto the stories on there once I get them done. Because it's so funny watching the TikTok now. It's really sweet because it was just my documentation to the 106 kilometer. So I'm a bit behind on it. So it doesn't even show that I win it yet, which is so funny because now I've gone on in a short amount of time to do the 100 miler, but I didn't document all my training runs for the 100 miler, but I did every single one, all my long runs for the 106 kilometer. I was so, I'd imagine it was the first times, well, other than the 50K I'd done the year before, I was running marathons for the first times in my life. Like, I was so proud that I'd ran a marathon, and then it just became the thing where I was doing 2 in a weekend. And yeah, so my TikTok, I wouldn't even know what my username is. I guess you just type in, I think it is Charlotte Emily Fisher on TikTok, but obviously it's just at Charlotte Fisher on Instagram, and I do share the videos over. I just need to sit down, finish editing them, and do the little voiceovers. And I've got a few clips I can put together for the 100 one. But it was just raining so much. My partner for the 106 kilometer, he's filmed with drone and a camera, and he's editing together an actual little mini documentary about it. Little did we know then we'd go on to a 100 miler, but it just, there would have been no way on the day because the weather was so bad. Equipment would have just been ruined. We couldn't put the drone up. There was lightning storm, thunder, like it was chaos. And to be honest, I don't think I would have dealt well with a camera in my face in that race because I just don't think there was a moment of joy. A small amount, I think about 65 miles in, when I saw the other two were getting tired, females behind, and the sun had come out. I thought, this is great, but apparently we were in the eye of the storm at that point. So the weather got much worse than ever not long after, and I had a huge fall, busted my knee, and fell into a gate. So there was like a slight bit of joy at that point because I was like, oh, the other girls are pulling back, sun's out. I was like, this is it. Now it's plain sailing, but it got progressively worse.
But you have that with ultras, though, don't you? I mean, you'll find this as
Yeah.
your career continues that.
I think I got lucky with the Isle of Wight one where I was just on a high the whole way around. And I feel like 100K is a bit of a sweet spot for me where I hadn't, I didn't, everyone said, what were your lows? I was like, I didn't have any. It was amazing. And I think that's quite a
Good sign. That's a really
But
good sign.
I understood that they were there because the 50K the year before for zero training, that was a massive low for most of it because I was just out of my depth. Whereas the 100 went quite well, but this 100 miler, it was just totally different ball game because of the weather. From the beginning, it was tough. Your feet were like wet and sore from the beginning. Like you're wet. I had such bad chafing burns because I was wet. There was no point doing kit change because you get wet again.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
I've had races like that where it's just you absolutely soak through from beginning to end, and
And it's a long time. I mean, my pacer, thank God, she had some gloves in her kit bag. because my hands were frozen in the night section, and you don't think in August you're going to be shivering and frozen. I was Baltically cold. It really was not the race that I had expected, or I'd
That
watched all
is,
these
that
vlogs,
is it.
and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so hot. I love my ice lolly I'm getting." And I'd really mentally prepared. I'd ordered, like I said, these specialist neck things where you put them in water and put them
Oh
on,
yeah, yeah,
down. I was so prepared for this hot race. New sunglasses,
yeah.
um, everything, and yeah,
Yeah.
couldn't
So,
have been worse. It literally could not have been worse.
I had something similar. So I had in June I did the Spine Challenge in North, so like the North section of the Spine, and it was obviously like leading up to that point we had like a heat wave, didn't we? And it was I was in Corfu with the family, and it was red hot there, and I was thinking this is perfect. I've had like weeks of like heat training to get ready for trudging up the top section of the Spine race, and then on the day, literally 5 minutes before the race started, torrential rain, and it rained for like 24 hours.
Oh
And then
no.
the sun did come out eventually, but by that point the damage was already done, and you just soak through. Your feet are like macerated, and
Mm.
probably
But
not
this
good.
was the thing. On the day, I said to my partner Charlie, there was a gap where we didn't see our crew for 20 miles, so we had quite a lot of time to go off. And I was like, I don't care how much it costs. Buy me 3 pairs of waterproof socks. I don't care the cost. Like at that point, you just like, I knew that was like my only way to win, but
Mm,
go like to keep going.
mm,
And I was willing to like whatever the cash was. But there was only 2 pairs in the shop. But yeah, I think it was £55 for 2 pairs of socks, which is ludicrous. But that
no,
just gave me so much relief because all my
yeah,
trainers, obviously, even though they were Gore-Tex, they were still soaked through. The socks I had were all wet through, and these waterproof socks, they just gave me just like that bit of relief for enough time to like lift my morals again and yeah, keep me going.
yeah.
And,
What
and
brand were they? The
or
deck
something.
shells.
Yeah,
Deck shells, yeah.
yeah, comfy. Big.
Yeah, they are good. They are good, really good
And
deck shells.
I mean, as a dog walker, waterproof socks are part of my kit anyway because I try for feet issues. I do have some, I think they're called fit flops, which are a type of welly which is meant to be good for your feet. But
Mm,
I get plantar fasciitis really badly, so I try and wear good trainers for all of my walking as well. So obviously, when it's raining, I try and do a waterproof sock Gore-Tex trainer combination as long into the year as I can get away with. I think there is probably usually January, February I have to do wellies,
mm,
or February, March kind of time. But I try and so I do use waterproof socks. I know some people hate them, but I'd already used them because of my walking. Um, but yeah, I don't know what type of brand that I had, but they were big, chunky. They were definitely more dog walking ones, but they had given me the most relief. Hence why I said to Charlie, like, go buy whatever waterproof socks you can find. And yeah, £55 for 2 pairs of socks. I was like, wow. But you
yeah.
know what? It was worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's it. And this notoriety that you've got now with winning races, I'm sure you're going to get sent loads of free stuff anyway, so I won't worry about the cost.
I hope so. Need them sponsors to come in because honestly, I
Yeah,
think that day cost well over £600 all in. Like it is
yeah,
expensive. I mean,
yeah,
it's a big trophy, but had I not had that trophy, I would have just the buckle. But it's like it's a lot of investment, and
yeah,
obviously all the coaching, all the time. I had to turn away so much work for the training because I was just like I can't. I'm doing a marathon. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, I've got to do a marathon.
yeah.
Can't help you.
And that's why it's a middle-aged, privileged man's sport.
Exactly. So bloody expensive. And don't even get me started when you look at like the ones abroad. Like I was looking at that Ultra X in Jordan and Marathon des Sables, and you're looking
Yeah,
at thousands. So
literally thousands. But
so
you can do good races like a bit cheaper. So in May I went out to Italy and there's a race called UT LAC, which is like a new trail race, and that like the flights were like 60 quid or something, and then the train was like 20 quid, like up to Lecco on the everything. So you can do European like mountain races
yeah.
at a reasonable
You know,
price.
people right now doing UTMB and they're out there doing the altitude, getting used to
Yeah,
it now for like 3 weeks. But it's like that's 3 weeks of their life. They're out there
well, a month
in
they'll
the
be out
Alps where it's expensive
there.
training, and it's like wow,
Yeah.
living the
But
dream, to be honest.
if you're there in a training camp put on by a sponsor, then it's all right, isn't it?
Amazing. Like Yeah, I'd be there. Like, it's just
Well, I'm sure you are going to get there. Just like hearing your story and everything, it seems like you've
I
got
hope
a.
so. I hope I'm not just a two-hit wonder and then that's
No,
it.
you can't be. No, I mean, you don't win a race like that, like a Centurion North Downs Way, like just by fluke. So, I think you've got a great career ahead of you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you do with races like coming up.
Oh, thank you.
It's good. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you spending some time. I know you're busy.
No, thanks for putting the effort into the questions and stuff. Do you know, people have been asking if you're doing any interviews and stuff. And I did say there's a podcast coming. A few people have asked. They said, once the link's live, can I link it to them? Because
Yeah.
so many people want to know.
Mm.
Oh, there's one thing though that I haven't spoke about, which is an interesting thing about the race. That this is part of the story which I've been telling people they're very interested about it. Is obviously I didn't hit any of the lows during the 106 kilometer, and I didn't go through the night, so I didn't experience hallucinations. But they very much came into the North Down Way to a point where I, because of the TikToker, do you know Andy Glaze?
Is an American
Yeah,
ultra?
he's got the 100
Yeah.
mile Strava streak. He's just he did
Yeah, he does.
Kona and another 100 miler, like 350-mile races.
Yeah,
In
he just does eat them for breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah, literally big inspiration to me. I watched his TikToks and I was like, give me some of that. And he shows the highs and the lows, so it's very relatable. Hence why he'd shown these really crazy lows where he's hallucinating, saying that he could see a toad, all of this. So I was very aware that hallucinations happened thanks to Andy, but obviously I'd never experienced them.
Yeah.
So with my pacer, which is my partner's dad, he's ex, I want to say Navy. Oh, if I get this wrong, that's really bad. It's some sort of, yes, it is Navy. He's a doctor and he's very, how do you say, logical thinking.
Mm.
And so I've jumped out of the way of something and I didn't want to basically admit that I was hallucinating. So I was like, oh, he's like, what's wrong? And I said, oh, that statue of the gargoyle. I was like, I know I'm hallucinating. It's just moved out into the path at me. And he looked at me and he was like, Char, there is no statue there. And I looked again and it was just bushes. And I was like, no, not only have I imagined it moving out into the path, the statue doesn't even exist. And that was the beginning of quite some strong hallucinations. But I was able to keep level headed because I'd seen these TikToks and I knew kind of that happened. And it was just exhaustion. Do you know, it's like 2 a.m. You've been going since 7 a.m. the day before and it's dark and it's wet and it's cold. But yeah, that's one of the stories that people have been asking to hear about. So if I missed that out of the podcast,
Yeah.
um,
Not miss out. I really enjoy hallucinations. All of mine seem to be.
I was just a bit like, well, it'd been the same boring trees for hours because, North Down Way, I was expecting these beautiful views. It was so stormy, you couldn't see a thing. And then I was just in trees or hills. So the hallucinations, it did mix things up a bit. I was like, oh, well. I see some lizards on the ground. There was the gargoyle. There was a horse in the stables, a few things. And I was like,
It was for me on the summer spiny race. It was black bears. I was seeing bears in the forest. Yeah, like big black bears, like stood up on the hind legs and stuff,
oh,
like
wow.
in the distance. And then when I got to him, it was just like part of a tree.
Yeah,
And
I was just,
you just know they're not real.
yeah.
But those few seconds, you're convinced that it is.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I knew the gargoyle wasn't coming out at me, but I was still fully convinced there was a gargoyle statue there. And then for that not to be real either, I was like, wow, that is some hallucination. Like the brain is crazy.
Get used to them, especially if you start doing longer races. They'll feature heavily, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on and having a chat and everything. And I'll make sure I get some your links, whatever links you want, putting in the show notes. I'll get them in there and
Perfect.
feel free to share away.
Awesome.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Bye.